There's something nobody tells you when you finally land that stable job. Nobody warns you about the morning, not the first morning when everything feels like victory, but the 847th morning. The one where you wake up, look at the ceiling, and feel something you can't name. Not unhappiness exactly, not gratitude either. Something in between. A flatness, a low hum of, "Is this it?" that you quickly silence before your feet even hit the floor. You were supposed to feel safe, and you do. That's the problem. Because here's the thing nobody says out loud. Safety and freedom are not the same thing. We spend the first half of our lives chasing one and only realize too late that we traded away the other. The contract was never written. You never signed it consciously, but it was real. It is real, and every Sunday night when that strange weight settles in your chest around 8 p.m., when the weekend is ending and Monday is starting to materialize on the horizon, you feel the terms of that. Contract pressing down on you like a hand on your shoulder. You have a good job. You have income, you have security, you have everything you were told to want. So why does it feel like a cage? That question is not a complaint. It's not ingratitude. It's not weakness. It's the most important question you've never let yourself finish asking. And in this video, we're going to finish it together. But I need to warn you, what you're about to hear is not going to comfort you. It's going to do something more useful. It's going to make you see, with a clarity that's uncomfortable but necessary, because the prison we're talking about doesn't have bars. It has benefits, it has predictability, it has a pension plan, and that's what makes it so hard to leave and so easy to stay trapped inside forever. Stay with me. This is going to matter. Let me tell you about Marcos. Marcos is 38 years old. He works for a federal agency in a mid-sized Brazilian city. He has been there for 11 years. His title is senior analyst. His salary, after all the years of seniority increments, the benefits, the food vouchers and transportation allowances, puts him comfortably in the top 10% of earners in the country. He has a pension. He has tenure. He cannot be fired without an act of bureaucratic complexity that would take years to complete. Marcos studied for 4 years to pass his entrance exam. He sacrificed weekends, relationships and sleep. He told himself, once I get in, everything changes. And it did change. For a while. The first 2 years felt like reward. He was learning the system, navigating the hierarchy, building a routine. He bought a car. He moved into a bigger apartment. He started going to a gym on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. By year 4, the routine had set like concrete. He wakes at 6:47 a.m. He makes coffee with the same brand he's bought for 3 years. He drives the same route. He parks in the same spot. He greets the same colleagues with the same phrases. Rough Monday and almost Friday, can you believe this week? And they respond with the same half smiles. He attends meetings where the same reports are reviewed, where the same decisions are deferred, where the same manager says, we need to align on this, and nothing is ever aligned and no one seems to mind. At 5:30 p.m., Marcos leaves. He gets home by 6:15. He eats, watches something on a streaming service he's been meaning to cancel for 8 months, and goes to bed. He wakes at 6:47 a.m. Here is what Marcos doesn't tell anyone. He started waking up in the middle of the night about 2 years ago. Not from nightmares, just from silence. He lies there, eyes open in the dark, and counts the years left until retirement. 17. Sometimes 16 if he does the math differently. He thinks about the projects he never started. The business he sketched on a napkin in 2019 and tucked in a drawer. The trip he keeps postponing. The conversations he never has because there's no urgency. Everything is so managed, so contained, so fine, that nothing ever cracks open enough to let something real come through. Marcos is not depressed. His doctor says so. His life objectively is good. Marcos is stabilized. Chemically, professionally, financially stabilized. And somewhere under all that stabilization, something is slowly dying. What's dying? The psychologist Abraham Maslow would call it self-actualization. The human drive toward growth, toward becoming more fully oneself. In his famous hierarchy of needs, once survival and safety are secured, human beings naturally reach upward toward belonging, esteem, and ultimately self-realization. But Maslow noticed something disturbing. Some people, once they reach safety and comfort, stop. They build walls around the level they've reached and call it arrival. They call it success. They call it wisdom. What they don't realize is that they've mistaken a resting spot for a destination. The system Marcos works in was not designed to challenge him. It was designed to retain him. And there is a profound psychological mechanism at work here, one that economists call loss aversion, a concept rigorously studied by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in their landmark research on behavioral economics. Loss aversion is the cognitive bias by which human beings experience the pain of losing something approximately twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. In simple terms, losing 100 Rs hurts twice as much as winning 100 Rs feels good. Now apply that to a career, to a pension, to 11 years of accumulated seniority. Every time Marcos thinks about leaving, about pivoting, building something, investing seriously, creating an alternative, his mind doesn't calculate the potential gain. It calculates the potential loss, the salary he might give up, the pension he might forfeit, the security he has spent years building, and the pain of that imagined loss is so overwhelming, so viscerally uncomfortable, that the thought process shuts down before it ever gets started. He tells himself, now is not the right time. He tells himself, I'll do it in a few years. He tells himself, my situation is different. And then he sets his alarm for 6:47 a.m. and does it all over again. This is not weakness. This is neuroscience. This is your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, protect you from perceived danger. The problem is that the same mechanism that once protected humans from genuine physical threats, predators, starvation, war, is now being activated by the thought of leaving a job. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a lion and a resignation letter. But here's where it gets darker, because the system Marcos works in doesn't just benefit from his retention, it depends on it. The entire structure is built on predictability, on continuity, on people who stay. The hierarchy, the seniority scales, the pension contributions, the institutional memory, all of it is predicated on the assumption that people like Marcos will be there for 30 years. The institution needs him compliant, not unhappy necessarily, just contained, just stable enough to stay. And so the system, consciously or not, creates conditions that make leaving feel catastrophically dangerous while making staying feel perpetually tolerable. Just tolerable enough, not unbearable enough to force change, not fulfilling enough to eliminate the itch. Tolerable, fine, okay. The Sunday night feeling, that feeling has a name and we're about to give it one. I want you to think about a contract, not a legal contract, not something with fine print and notary stamps, something subtler, something that was handed to you gradually across years of schooling, family conversations, cultural messages, and professional socialization. Something you absorbed without ever being asked to sign. The contract says this: trade your time, your autonomy, and your growth potential for financial predictability and social legitimacy. Accept a ceiling in exchange for a floor. Give up the possibility of extraordinary outcomes in exchange for the guarantee of acceptable ones. And most importantly, stay quiet about it, because everyone around you has signed the same contract, and questioning it makes everyone uncomfortable. I call this the invisible stability contract. And here's what makes it truly insidious. It's not imposed by force. Nobody forces Marcos to stay. He could resign tomorrow. He knows this, and yet he doesn't. Because the invisible stability contract is not enforced by external pressure. It's enforced by the story Marcos tells himself about who he is, what he deserves, what is realistic, and what kind of person leaves a good thing behind. The contract doesn't live in the HR department. It lives in Marcos's mind, and in yours. The moment you start to see this, really see it, not as a clever metaphor, but as a description of an actual psychological structure governing your decisions, something shifts, not immediately into action, first into awareness. And awareness, as uncomfortable as it is the only place any real change ever begins. But I haven't told you the most important part yet. I haven't told you why this contract is so hard to break, and what happens to the people who do break it. Stay with me. Let's go deeper. The first layer of the invisible stability contract is what I call the identity fusion problem. After enough years in a stable institutional role, most people don't just have a job. They are their job. Their identity, their social status, their sense of self-worth become so entangled with their professional position that the thought of leaving doesn't feel like a career change. It feels like a death. It feels like self-erasure. Ask Marcos who he is at a social gathering, and he'll tell you his title before he tells you anything else. Senior Analyst. Federal agency. 11 years of service. These are not just facts about his employment. They are the architecture of his self-concept. They tell him what kind of man he is. Responsible, established, serious, someone who made it. What identity fusion does over time is make the institution's survival dependent on your identity, and your identity dependent on the institution's approval. You need the job not just for the salary. You need it for the answer to the question, who am I? And when your answer to that question is a job title, you have effectively given the institution permanent power over your psychology. Here is the question that identity fusion prevents you from asking. Who would you be without the title, without the institution, without the structure that currently defines you? That question terrifies most people, not because the answer is bad, but because there is no rehearsed answer, no practiced response. The silence that follows the question is not emptiness, it is possibility. But it has been so long since Marcos sat with pure, unstructured possibility that it feels like falling. The antidote to identity fusion is not abandonment, it's expansion. It's not, I am not my job, but I am more than my job. Building alternative sources of identity, as a builder, as an investor, as a creator, as someone who develops skills and generates value outside of institutional permission. Ask yourself, outside of your position, what are you building? Not as a hobby, as an identity, as a practice, as evidence of who you are becoming beyond the walls of the organization that currently defines you. What is the answer? And if the answer is nothing, what does that tell you about the contract you've been living under? The second layer is what I call the compound cost of postponement. We are very good as human beings at calculating immediate costs and very bad at calculating the slow, invisible costs of inaction. We see the risk of leaving. We do not see, cannot feel in our bones, the compound cost of staying. Let me be precise about what I mean. Every year Marcos spends in controlled containment is a year in which a certain version of him does not develop, a skill he doesn't build, a risk tolerance he doesn't cultivate, a business he doesn't attempt, a conversation he doesn't have with himself about what he actually wants. These are not dramatic losses, they are quiet ones. They accumulate the way interest compounds, slowly, invisibly, and then all at once. By the time Marcos is 55, he will have spent 31 years in a structure that was designed to preserve his utility, not his growth. He will be expert at navigating the internal politics of a single institution. He will have no meaningful financial assets outside of his pension. He will have developed a deep psychological dependence on external structure that will make retirement, paradoxically, feel not like freedom, but like free fall. This is not speculation. Research in occupational psychology consistently shows that workers in high stability, low agency roles show accelerated cognitive decline after retirement compared to those who maintained entrepreneurial or high autonomy work practices throughout their careers. The brain, like any biological system, adapts to its environment. A brain trained for containment becomes a brain capable only of containment. The compound cost of postponement is not just financial, though it is ferociously financial. A person who begins meaningfully investing at 35 instead of 45 does not simply end up with a slightly larger portfolio. Due to the mathematics of compound growth, the difference can be measured in decades of financial freedom. In hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of Rs that exist or do not exist, depending on the decision made today. But beyond money, what is the cost in Sundays? In conversations with your children where you are physically present but psychologically absent, running the same loop. So frustration and resignation in the background? What is the cost in the texture of your days, in the quality of your attention, in the kind of man you are at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, exhausted, contained, going through motions? These costs don't appear on any spreadsheet. Nobody calculates them, but they are real, they are enormous, and they are quietly compounding right now as you watch this. What would it cost you, specifically, to do nothing for another 5 years? Not in dramatic terms, in real, boring, cumulative terms? What does 5 more years of the invisible stability contract actually purchase? And is that a good deal? The third layer is the risk illusion. The most common thing people with stable jobs say when this conversation comes up is, "I can't afford to take risks right now." And I want to examine that statement very carefully because it contains a fundamental confusion that keeps millions of intelligent people trapped. What is a risk? In everyday language, we use risk to mean the possibility of a bad outcome, of losing something we currently have. From this perspective, leaving a stable job is a risk and staying is safe. But this framing is profoundly misleading because it treats the status quo as a neutral zero-risk baseline. It treats inaction as the absence of a bet. It is not. Staying in a job that contains your growth, preserves your dependency, and compounds the cost of postponement is a bet. It is a very large, very long-term bet. It's a bet that the pension system will remain solvent for 30 more years. It's a bet that the institution will continue to value your specific role. It's a bet that your physical and psychological health will hold through decades of structural frustration. It's a bet that the version of yourself who exits this system at 65 will have enough life force, financial foundation, and psychological flexibility to enjoy what comes next. These are not small bets, and they are not safe ones. The philosopher Nassim Taleb, in his work on risk and uncertainty, describes a phenomenon he calls fragility. Systems that appear stable but are actually accumulating hidden vulnerability. A fragile system doesn't gradually weaken in ways you can observe. It appears fine, then collapses suddenly. When exposed to stress it was never designed to handle. A career built entirely on institutional stability, with no diversified skills, no external income, no psychological practice of autonomy, no financial assets. Outside the pension is a fragile system. It looks perfectly safe until the moment it isn't, and at that moment, the person inside it has none of the experience, the resources, or the psychological infrastructure to adapt. True risk management is not about avoiding all exposure to uncertainty. It is about building genuine anti-fragility, developing capacities that grow stronger under stress, rather than breaking under it. Every time you build a skill outside of your institution, you reduce fragility. Every time you invest a portion of your income in assets that grow independently of your job, you reduce fragility. Every time you practice the discomfort of uncertainty in small, controlled doses, you train your nervous system for the inevitable moments when certainty dissolves. The question is not, how do I avoid risk? The question is, what kind of risk am I actually carrying, and is it the risk I would choose if I were choosing consciously? Most people with stable jobs are carrying enormous, invisible, concentrated risk. They just call it safety, and they won't discover the difference until the bill arrives. What risk are you actually carrying right now? The kind that shows up on your pay stub, or the kind that doesn't show up anywhere at all? The fourth layer brings us to what I call the architecture of permission. One of the least examined features of institutional life is how it progressively erodes your capacity to act without external authorization. In any hierarchical structure, a government agency, a military organization, a large corporation, nearly every significant action requires permission. You need approval to spend money. You need sign-off to implement an idea. You need your manager's blessing to change a process. You need to pass through committee to propose anything that deviates from established procedure. This is not inherently bad. Large organizations require coordination, and coordination requires structure. The problem is not the structure itself. It's what years of navigating that structure do to your relationship with your own initiative. After enough time in a permission-based environment, people begin to internally replicate the approval mechanisms of the institution. They stop asking, "What do I want to do?" and start asking, "What will be approved?" They stop generating ideas and start generating justifications. They stop acting from intrinsic motivation and start acting from external validation. They outsource their judgment to the hierarchy so completely that they eventually lose confidence in their own capacity to make decisions without institutional backing. This is why so many people with stable jobs feel genuinely paralyzed when they imagine doing something independently. It's not that they lack intelligence or capability, it's that they have been systemically trained to require permission, and outside the institution, nobody is going to give it to them. The architecture of permission is one of the most subtle and destructive features of long-term institutional life, and it creates a particularly cruel trap. The longer you stay, the more dependent on permission you become, and the more terrifying independence feels, which makes you stay longer, which deepens the dependency. The way out of this trap is not dramatic, it is deliberate. It is about consistently practicing the act of beginning things without asking anyone, building something small without needing approval, making a financial decision outside of institutional frameworks, creating something, anything, that exists because you decided it should exist, not because someone in a hierarchy signed off on it. Each act of self-authorized initiative is a small dose of antidote to the architecture of permission. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels slightly uncomfortable, slightly presumptuous, slightly like you're getting away with something. That discomfort is important. It means the deconditioning is working. But there's something most people do here. At this exact point, when they begin to see the architecture of permission clearly and start to take small, deliberate steps toward autonomy, and it's where everything falls apart. Before I tell you what that is, I want to talk to you directly about something. If what you've heard so far has landed, if Marcos's story feels uncomfortably familiar, if the layers we've unpacked feel like descriptions of your actual life, then you're at a threshold. You're standing at the edge of a shift in perspective that could change the trajectory of everything that comes next. But perspective alone doesn't build wealth. Awareness alone doesn't compound. And insight, without the right tools to translate it into action, tends to dissipate the same way a good intention does, in the noise of Monday morning and the weight of the week. That's exactly why I built the Free Your Mind kit. It's not a course. It doesn't have modules, live calls, or a Facebook group you'll never open. It's 3 tools designed to work on 3 different levels of what keeps people like Marcos, and like you, stuck inside the invisible stability contract. The first is an ebook, The 5 Patterns Keeping You Trapped. 35 pages of financial psychology diagnosis, written specifically for people with stable jobs. Not generic self-help, not motivational filler. A precise, uncomfortable inventory of the exact behavioral patterns that masquerade as prudence and responsibility while quietly making you poorer in every dimension that matters. The second is the iStability Cost Calculator, an interactive tool you open in your browser, enter your real numbers into your salary, your years of service, your current spending, your retirement timeline, and it shows you something most people have never actually calculated, the true cost of inaction. Not in vague terms, but in real numbers. The wealth you haven't built, the hours of your life you've traded for controlled stagnation, the years of freedom that don't exist yet and might never exist because of decisions being made right now. The third is the My Free Your Mind series. 3 tracks, 21 days, 8 to 12 minutes each. Audio you listen to when you wake up or before you sleep. Not podcasts, not lectures, but psychologically precise tracks designed to work on identity, on your relationship with value, and on the shift from passive to active. The ebook creates intellectual awareness. The calculator creates emotional awareness. The audios work on identity, the deepest layer, the one that everything else sits on top of. 3 tools, 3 layers, 1 lifetime access, no subscription, no pressure. The link is in the description. When you're ready. Now, back to what most people do wrong at exactly this point. When someone begins to see the architecture of their containment, when the invisible contract becomes visible, and the cost of staying starts to feel real, the most common response is not action. It is objection. The objections are specific, they are intelligent, they are sincere, and they are, almost without exception, constructed from the same psychological material as the contract itself. The first objection is, my retirement is already on track. I want you to sit with this one carefully, because on track is doing an enormous amount of work in that sentence. On track, according to whom? According to projections made by an institution with an obvious interest in your continued contribution. according to calculations that assume the system remains solvent for 3 more decades, according to a standard of enough that was defined for you before you had any idea what your life would actually cost, not financially, but in terms of what you would want it to mean. Your retirement may be financially on track, but is the version of yourself who arrives at retirement after 30 more years of the invisible stability contract, a person you're excited to become? Is the trajectory you're on pointing toward a life that looks like freedom, or toward a slower version of the same containment with a different label? The second objection is, now is not the time to take risks. We already examined the risk illusion, but I want to add something here. When will it be the right time? After the car is paid off, after the kids finish school, after the renovation, after the next salary increment. There is always a structural reason why this particular moment is the wrong one. The objection, not now, is not a plan. It is a postponement mechanism dressed as prudence, and it compounds just like debt does. The third objection is, my situation is different. This is the most important one. So I want to be gentle but direct. Your situation is specific. Your numbers, your family structure, your obligations, these are real and they matter. But the psychological mechanism of the invisible stability contract is not specific to anyone. It operates the same way in every person it captures, and one of its defining features is convincing each person inside it that their particular version is uniquely reasonable, uniquely justified, uniquely too complex to question. Marcos says his situation is different. Every Marcos says this. The real cost I want you to consider, beyond money, beyond career, beyond the rational arguments, is the cost in versions of yourself that never existed. There is a version of you that built something, that took the income security you already have, not as a prison but as a foundation, and used it deliberately to create something parallel, something growing, something that didn't require permission. That version of you exists in possibility right now. He is not fictional. He is simply unchosen. Every year of the invisible stability contract is a year in which that version of you remains unchosen. And every Sunday night, that particular wait at 8 p.m., when the weekend ends and Monday begins its approach, is the moment when you can feel most clearly the distance between who you are and who you could be. That distance has a cost. It shows up in the quality of your sleep, in the patience you have with your family, in the level of aliveness you bring to your days. It shows up in the conversations you never start because you've pre-decided they're not possible. It shows up in the small habitual suppressions that become, over years, the texture of a life. The Sunday night feeling is not random. It is precise. It is your nervous system's most honest assessment of the gap between your potential and your current trajectory. You can medicate it with series and convenience food and distractions, or you can listen to it. What has it been trying to tell you? Now I want to come back to Marcos, because something happened. About 3 months ago, Marcos did something small, so small it barely registered as a decision. He opened a brokerage account, not because he had a plan, not because he had been given permission by anyone, not because the timing was finally right. He opened it because he had been watching a channel like this one late at night, and something had cracked open just enough to let in a small, clear thought. I don't have to wait. He transferred 400 reais into the account, a symbolic amount, not enough to change anything mathematically, enough to change something psychologically, because for the first time in years, he had acted outside the architecture of permission. He had made a financial decision that didn't require his employer's approval, his pension system's blessing, or his family's consensus. He had simply decided, quietly, privately, to begin. That was 3 months ago. Today, Marco still works at the federal agency. He still drives the same route. He still parks in the same spot. But something is different in the interior. The Sunday night feeling is not gone, but it has changed character. It has become less like a sentence and more like a signal, less like a verdict and more like a compass. He has started reading, not motivational material, real material, books on behavioral finance, on economic psychology, on the mechanics of compound growth. He has begun tracking his actual expenses for the first time, not as a punishment, but as a form of self-knowledge. He has started a small side project, something he's been postponing for 4 years. Not because he expects it to replace his income, but because he needed the evidence that he could begin something without being authorized to begin it. None of this is dramatic. None of it is the kind of transformation that makes a good movie. But Marcos is no longer the same person who lay awake in the dark, counting 17 years until retirement. He is the person who has decided, quietly without fanfare, to use the stability he has not as a ceiling, but as a floor. That is the transformation. Not from stability to risk. From stability as a destination to stability as a foundation. From the passive holding of a position to the active building of something that grows. From an identity fused to a job title, to an identity built on what you create, invest in, and become, regardless of which institution currently hosts your labor. The invisible stability contract says, you belong to the structure. The alternative is not to destroy the structure. The alternative is to belong to yourself and use the structure as a tool rather than a home. Marcos is beginning that, slowly, imperfectly, with 400 reais and a brokerage account and a book he reads for 20 minutes every night after the streaming service goes dark. It's not everything, but it's a beginning, and beginnings compound. I want to ask you something before you close this video, not a rhetorical question, an actual one I'd like you to answer, in the comments or just to yourself in the silence after this ends. What is the one thing you already know you should be doing, the one thing you keep postponing, keep surrounding with conditions and justifications, and not yet, that would begin to change the trajectory? Not the big thing, not the complete reinvention. The one small, self-authorized, permission-free beginning. If you know what it is, and I think most of you do, write it below. Not as a public commitment if you don't want to. Just write one word. The word that stands for the thing. Something that means something to you and only you. Because naming it is the first act of autonomy. The first step out of the architecture of permission. This channel exists for one reason. Not to give you financial tips. Not to sell you an investment strategy. But to offer a different way of thinking about money, about stability, about the structures that shape your life without announcing themselves. Every week, a new angle on the same essential question. Are you the subject of your financial life, or an object within someone else's system? If that question matters to you, if this video landed somewhere real, then subscribing is not a passive act. It's a decision to keep asking the question, to keep pulling on the thread, to stay in conversation with a perspective that takes your situation seriously without flattering you into complacency. The community that's building here is made of people who are done being fine, who want more than tolerable, who are using stability not as an end, but as a beginning. You don't become free by accident, you begin.